your name and where are you from?
I'm Norman Newton, and I'm from Seminole, Texas, mainly. I was raised in Snyder.
Yes, sir. What year did you start surveying?
1957.
Can you describe how technology has changed since you started, and do you feel it has been beneficial?
Definitely. uh, when I started, the surveying was done with a transit and a chain, which is what we call a chain is today a steel tape.
Yes,
And now it's advanced where most surveys are done by GPS or the global positioning system.
what did you like about surveying that kept you in this profession and made you want to excel?
History. And I will back up and say that in school I had no interest in history.
Who had the most positive influence on you while you were learning and growing in this profession?
Carlisle Andrew Tubbs.
Do you have any experiences with this person?
Worked for him for 7 years. And he's the person that really got me interested in surveying. I had worked for 2 years while I was still in high school for a surveyor, engineer, and commercial residential design. At that time, or while I was still in school, I thought I wanted to become an architect. And I went to work for this company in Snyder, which is a small town. And I liked, I went to work part-time while I was going to school as an architectural draftsman. Occasionally I would go out in the field, survey crew, but at that point I didn't really have an interest in it. But after graduating, I moved to Lubbock and went to work for Mr. Tubbs and worked directly with him in the field and office. And it was apparent that, yes, that's what I really wanted to do. He would drive, usually jobs are hour, 2 hours away from where we're located. And on the way down, I would be researching through the old books of previous jobs. And while he was driving, in doing the research, eventually, then I would start planning how we would go about conducting the survey we was headed for. Within a year after starting work for him, I was put in charge of a field party, or responsible charge of a field party. And he felt that I could do the work and successfully. And of course he would review it, everything that I did. Surveying comprises of quite a few different disciplines. History, as I mentioned, math. You have to have an analytical mind. Basically, you gather data and analyze it to come up with solutions. And as Mike was saying earlier, the thrill of getting out there and finding this monument, or there's nothing like described 100 years ago. Time has taken its toll. Weather, if it was an earth mound, there may not be anything that appears to be a mound, but you look for discoloration in the earth. Or the stone mound, the animals will scatter that stone mound. or the sand will cover it up. But when you've done your research, you go out and you know where to start searching for it, and you find it, that's satisfying.
Yes, sir.
To find that needle in the haystack.
Yes, sir. Would you discuss one of your favorite projects you performed?
All of them.
Yes, sir.
And I've worked all over West Texas. I have worked even in North Houston area. I've worked in New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, a little bit in Oklahoma. I spent 16 months working up in the middle of Missouri, all the way through Illinois to Chicago. Arizona, where I first trip out to Arizona was where I now reside. And I've worked in the top of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, northeast of Santa Fe, or out west of Raton. Historic places, and as Mike said, we're getting paid to enjoy the beauty of all of these places, the wildlife, where other people are paying to do it.
Yes, sir. Is there a job that was your least favorite, or?
All of them. At the time, like as I said, the beauty of the place, we enjoy being there. We're there. Now we're working hard.
Yes, sir.
And prior to GPS, surveying was not easy.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's still not easy, but GPS has assisted us in doing more in a day than what we could the old traditional ways. The mundane work is the least interesting, doing the mortgage surveys and construction surveying. It's not interesting for a surveyor, but it has to be done too. Everything you see today, a surveyor has been involved in at some point. So the land, before people settled the country, the surveyor was the first out. This was wild country. The Indians were still out here, and the cavalry would accompany survey crews sometimes. But first, the land had to be surveyed to where they could bring people in, and ownership. People wanted to own land. But the surveyor was the first one out there long before anything else. They had a name. The Indians when they would see a survey crew, they referred to him as man who steal land. And that's why they would try to kill the surveyors, because they knew that settlement was coming behind them. But then from that point, after the people started settling lands, cities would build. Well, someone had to survey that town site. Lots, okay, I bought a lot. Where is my lot? The surveyor had to have staked it out so that the buyer knew where his land was. And as I said, construction surveying, you can't build a building or anything else without a form of surveying to measure that, to lay it out. Now, sometimes the builder does his own layout, but it's still a form of surveying. As I've always, in most cases, people are more reluctant today that they don't like having to pay for surveys. What do I need a survey for? It's for their own protection. And I've always referred to it, it's really a necessary evil. It's evil, people think it's evil because I have to pay for it, but it's necessary. And people that are fixing to even construct a fence, you're spending a lot of money to construct a fence. If you put it in the wrong place, you may have to tear it down and move it. So it would be cheaper to have a surveyor to locate that line for you.
Yes, sir. Would you recommend young people to pursue a career in surveying, and why?
I would, definitely. Because it's a satisfying profession. There's many phases in surveying. Some people, some surveyors prefer to stay in the office, but they've had their field experience already. Some of us would prefer to be out in the field, actually doing the hard physical work. And it, as I said, it may be zero out there on some jobs. Incidentally, you go back to the old-fashioned way of measuring when it's zero, because none of the electronics are going to work. But also, it may be 120 where you're at. If you're off over around Carlsbad, around the old Salt Lakes in July, it can be miserable. But it's interesting. You still make it interesting.
What advice would you give to a young professional?
Work hard and don't punch the clock. You just stay at it till the job's done.